Hi everyone and welcome to the Rise High community out there. So glad that you could join us today. Today I am joined by Omar from Key Property. He is the owner, director and key inspector at Key Property. And today we're talking about a topic that many of you ask us about all the time, and that is property inspections. And it's all about, you might have found a house that you want to buy, or you might be looking for a house, but then you're not actually sure. You might have fallen in love with it from the open, but you're not actually sure if it's the right property for you or if it has any maintenance issues. And you really want to get that confidence and comfort to know that what you're buying, you're paying, what you're paying for, you're getting, and that the property that you're buying is going to stand the test of time. So I thought I'd bring Omar in today to share with us some tips and tricks and things to look for and questions to ask, just so you can make the most out of your property inspection, your pre-purchase property inspection. And he's actually leaving the viewers with a really great freebie today. We have a freebie where it actually lists down all the things that you should look for when you're purchasing a property. We'll talk about that more during the segment today. But if you go to our blog after this Facebook Live, you'll be able to get the link to the pre-purchase checklist. Is that what we're going to call it?
Top 10 checklist, top 10 things to look out for when you're on the property hunt.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us, Omar.
Oh, thank you. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, so Omar's been in the business you've been in property for like 20 years, in construction for 8. Yeah. So he knows his stuff.
Yeah, we started Key Property about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the story behind Key Property and why we got started was not only our own personal experience, with dealing with property and also dealing with property inspectors. There's a lot of great inspectors out there, but one thing I thought that was a bit lacking from a couple of people I encountered was that real personable attention, and that level of customer service, which I felt was a bit missing in certain parts of the industry. But also, we started because we wanted to offer a service that really helped people and something that they felt was real value and eased the property search, because let's face it, it's quite a stressful time, and no doubt the people that you're dealing with.
Absolutely, it's a lot of money to spend.
That's right.
You want to make sure you're making the right decision.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah.
No one wants a nasty surprise after they've moved into their dream house, or
which is, and look, unfortunately, hard to avoid in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
So we believe our intention is just to help people have the most confidence possible. So if you can make a decision based on confidence, and if our service can help that, then great.
Absolutely.
Had a success. Yeah.
So I guess let's just get right into it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what are the benefits of getting a property inspection when you're actually buying a house, and at what point in the process should people be actually getting a property inspection done? And when I say property inspection, I'm talking about pest and building.
Yep.
So maybe give me the pros and cons of both of those things, and when someone should proceed with that.
Excellent. Thanks, Marissa. So in terms of when, it's never too early to engage a property inspector. Another part of our service is we're happy to liaise with our clients early on. So even if before they make an offer, if they find a property, they can send me the link and I'll tell them, this is what I would normally look out for in these sort of properties. So when you're going to the open, look out for this and look out for that. And again, just to give them that little bit of additional confidence, and in making the decision on the property. Then once you've made an offer on the property, at that point, it's probably really good to let the inspector know so that we can schedule it in, because usually we've only got the 48-hour cooling off period to get the inspection done. So the sooner you let the inspector know, the better. We try to remain as flexible as possible to accommodate people in that time, and more often than not, we can get it done.
Yeah, we always encourage our clients to actually make their offers subject to building and pest inspection, and actually give a little bit more time for that to happen. Just so that they've actually got time to, you might give it a week grace or something, so that you've actually got time to get the inspector in, analyse the report, ask some questions before you have to go back and decide whether you're going to proceed on the purchase. So that's doing the building and pest inspection during that 48-hour period. You're talking about in situations where they haven't put building and pest as a condition. That's
it. So there's the only condition normally would be subject to finance. And unfortunately there's a lot of agents, or not agents, sorry, vendors won't accept, or if they get an offer which is only subject to finance but not subject to building permit, they might accept that just because it's a bit more clear cut.
Yeah.
So that's why some people don't really have a choice and they have to get it done in that 48 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right that the reason why we want to do it as soon as possible, and it'd be better to have that subject to building inspection, is because if there might need to be further investigation required, we might uncover an issue that needs to go invasive, or something that you may need to engage an electrician or a plumber to come and do a specific test on you. And if you had a subject to building inspection, then it allows you that grace and that time to do that.
Yes, I think, would you agree that it's always a preference to have that as a condition of your offer?
Yeah,
a condition of the contract, and that you would only exclude that as a condition in the cases where it was the difference between you getting the property or not getting the property?
Yeah, look, if a vendor receives multiple offers, one says subject to something, one says subject to something else, but the offer's essentially the same, they're probably going to go for the other one, So if you can, though, definitely get a subject to building inspection.
Shout out to Eleni, Arturo, Anita, Emily, James. Thanks for joining us, guys. If you've got any questions, we're here live with you, so we'd love to answer your questions. You can put them in the comments section below, and we will definitely answer them. So we've discussed that it's really important to get the building and pest inspection up front early, but let's just take a step back and say, well, what are the benefits of getting these inspections done, and what sort of things do they reveal?
Yep. So the major benefit of having a building inspection is that the inspector can go through the property. They've got their own time, or they can take their time and assess all the components that you're not going to see during an open. And by getting access to areas that you obviously can't access, such as the roof void, walking on the roof, and areas sort of behind the shed, behind the garage, and to an extent behind furniture, we get a bit of a closer look at things. And these are all areas that during an open you're not going to be able to tell. So the problem is that people get caught up with all the romance of buying a property, and they're more concerned about the size of the walk-in robe or the kitchen or the double car garage, but then they're not really noticing the ceiling stains, and they're not really noticing if there's anything else that could be risk, like a sag in the roof lining.
And sometimes I think, sometimes it's possible for an owner or an agent to make a house look really attractive for an open, and potentially hide some issues.
Concealing, they could be concealed. And look, we give everyone the benefit of the doubt. There is also scenarios where someone living in a house for so long just gets used to a problem and doesn't realise that's actually a problem, and how severe it's actually going behind the scenes. It's actually causing real serious problems. For example, really typical one is deteriorated grout in the shower area. People just get used to it and don't think much of it. But what really is happening there is water is slightly seeping in and potentially going into the wall cavity, which can be causing a real serious problem.
I think, like, when you are buying an older house, I guess depending on the age of the house, you probably think that for some houses there's going to be more issues than others.
Yep.
And I guess, we often find that our clients will get the building and pest inspections, and then if there are some issues that have been raised in the inspection report, they come back to us, and sometimes it can cause a bit of panic, or they're not sure if they're making the right decision proceeding. But I guess the bottom line is to go into the purchase knowing what the issues are,
knowing what you've got,
and having an idea of the cost to fix them.
That's right.
Because it might be that sometimes you might identify issues that don't necessarily need to be fixed immediately. Would you also, give people a bit of a gauge as to roughly what's required to fix it, or how much it costs to fix it, or just that they're going into this purchase, if they still love this house and they're happy to overlook the issues that are there, then they really go in open-eyed and they actually know what they're looking at.
Yeah. Sorry, got a bit distracted. Yeah, definitely. The one way that we present to all our clients is that we have to be very fair for the age and sympathetic to the age of the property. So, as you said, some properties are going to need a little bit more maintenance than others, and we identify that with people. So when I explain, let's just say it's a 1920 built house, I'll tell them, look, it kind of is what it is. Yes, this is a major defect. Yes, this is a problem, and unfortunately, it's quite costly to fix. But if you've decided that this is the type of property you're looking for and the age and style of property you're looking for, then that's the sort of problem you're going to face anyway. For some people, that's a really big deal, and it may actually cause them to want to walk away or have to alter their budget to accommodate it. Some people are like, it's much better than the house I'm living in now, or that I'm used to, and I'm fully prepared to handle whatever these issues are.
Yeah.
Other people also like, look, this is only going to be for 5 years, and then we're planning on knocking it down or doing a massive renovation. So as long as it holds up okay for this short time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really about going into the purchase, knowing what you're buying.
Yes, yeah.
And being aware of what might, what you might expect moving forward.
Yeah.
We've had a question come through from Mason. Thanks for the question. If we're planning to purchase a brand new house, is it still worth getting an inspection? That's a really good one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I get asked all the time, is it still worth doing? And what do you look out for? The inspection can be altered or changed, depending on what you're looking at. And again, sympathetic to the age of the property. It doesn't mean we're going to be ultra harsh on a brand new property, but there's a certain level of quality finish that you're expecting, out of certain components. So it is still definitely worth getting inspected, but also because once the walls are up and the ceiling lining's in, there could be a lot of faults and defects behind them that we can't see, but we can at least get inside the roof void, see if the timbers are okay or the framing is all okay, and done as best to code as possible. We're running all the tapware as well. Unfortunately, during a build, you could get a lot of muck in your drains. You could get, there's all sorts of different issues that could happen. And a lot of times, it's just things are just not tightened nicely, And it
would be nice to think that all builders build to a high quality, but it's not actually the case, unfortunately. So it's probably, important with a brand new build that you, just as equally important that you actually get the inspection, because you want to make sure that it's been built to code, built to a good standard.
Yeah.
Do you check that it's been built to code and that it's been built in line with what the council approval is, or is that beyond the scope of the report?
Yes, it is. It is actually, because realistically, all those all the codes and standards should be met, and they should not have gotten a certificate of completion if they weren't met. Okay, so there should be regular checks throughout. Certain components of the build need to be assessed by the council as well. So you'd naturally assume that it's been done to code, and unfortunately, some of the things a bit difficult to see them after it's already been completed. But what we do check for is some basic stuff that gets missed. For example, the opening of windows, like on a second story, there needs to be a restriction in bedroom windows, things like that. Penetration gaps under the cupboard and cabinetry. These are really small things, probably easy fixes, but can easily get overlooked. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of really good builders, in Adelaide. Unfortunately, they might trust some trades that are not doing their best job, and they might do a couple of great jobs for a few builds, and they might just drop the ball a little bit on one, and the build unfortunately slips through the cracks, and all of a sudden you've got a bad build on your hands. So,
and I guess proportionately to what you're paying for the house, the cost of the inspection is really quite minimal. So you're investing in a very large, significant asset with a lot of money. It's worth just checking, doing dotting the I's, crossing the T's, checking to make sure that you're buying what you think you're buying.
Yeah. Well, often what I say to people is, when you get your car serviced, you'll probably spend, on average, about $1,000 a year servicing your car. Now, part of that service is not just, parts and labour to repair. A lot of that service is on the mechanic actually assessing the vehicle and testing the vehicle to identify what the problems are. So technically, you're spending a fair bit of money each year servicing your car. I don't know that many people that drive a car worth more than their house. So why wouldn't you spend such a small amount, on the house just to get it checked? And again, just for that extra bit of confidence to know what it is you're looking for and what it is you're buying. Sorry.
Definitely. Now, I guess the other question that we had through the week is, it's pretty easy to know when to get a building and pest inspection when you're just making an offer and signing a contract in a normal sale environment. But some of our clients go to auction and they actually bid at auction. Now, once you bid at auction, it's unconditional. So you don't have that cooling off period. You can't have those conditions built in unless you've pre-negotiated them before the auction. So in these situations where someone's going to auction, what do you recommend in terms of the pest and building inspection? Do they need to get it done before they start bidding? And
we actually do a fair few auction properties, and auctions have maintained popularity even through COVID. They were still quite popular, even though they were.
Which is interesting, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. We'll do them as early as possible. So and because it's auction, there's normally no time frame. So if the auction's set for a Saturday, we could get in that previous Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. So they'll have ample time. You're right. There's limited investigation available afterwards. So it's normally whatever we can identify on the day, they'll have to make that decision. They can't really negotiate with the vendor to get things fixed and things like that. If they're successful, they've got it.
That's it. So you've got to be extra careful that you've done all your due diligence if you are actually bidding at auction.
Yep.
Because once you've bought the property at auction, that's it. It's a done deal.
Mm.
There's no turning back. Whether whether the walls cave in the week after settlement or not, that property is yours to love and keep.
That's right. Something else I always tell my clients, and as you mentioned before about the confidence and what's the benefit of getting an inspection. One thing I always tell them is that there's normally 4 points that you should look out for when buying a property, and that's first of all is, does the size suit you? Is it too big? Is it too small? The location suit you? Does the style suit you? And look, style is important. A lot of people think, it doesn't matter, I'll give it a paint job, or we'll get used to it. Trust me, we've had green windows on our house for the last 8 years. My wife hates it, and she reminds me every day, right? So
you might have to change those windows.
Yeah, we're going to have to soon. So those things are important. Then ultimately, can you afford it? And I don't mean can you just get a loan and buy it, because if you've got a great broker such as yourselves or the team at Rise High, you're going to be able to buy the property, but it's owning and maintaining it. And hopefully my report gives you an indication of what sort of items or components are going to need maintenance. And even though we may not be able to give a direct cost unless you get those relevant trades to quote, we can still give you kind of an indication of, okay, this is roughly going to be about this much, or I would budget in the next 10 years, you'd have to spend X amount,
Yeah, that's so important, because we really try and educate on financial literacy and, managing your money. And when people get excited about upgrading their home or buying that next dream home or even an investment property, it's like you said, it's not just the cost of buying it that you have to think about. You've got to factor in, what is it going to cost you to maintain this property over the long term? So it's so important. Shout out to Giselle, Luke, Sam and Sonia. Thanks for joining us, guys. Please leave a comment below or feel free to ask your questions. We'd love to chat with you through this segment. I also want to ask, how you choose the right inspector, because there are lots of pest and building inspectors in Adelaide. How do you find the right inspector for you to do the job that you want them to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So can I start by saying, do not go by cost, okay? The how much an inspector decides to charge their client is directly related to the time and effort they're going to put into the job. Okay, there's some really good inspectors on there, and they're a bit cheaper than others because they might be at that phase of their career or something like that, and that's fine. But it's so often that I may miss out on a job or something because of someone that's going in extremely cheap or something like that, and it's just a bit of it's a really, as we said, it's a really important decision you're making here. You really don't want to have to compromise. And I'm by no means the most expensive inspector out there, but I think I'm kind of mid-range. So that's the first thing I'd say is do not make a decision based on price.
So are you happy to give us a bit of a range of how much people would expect to pay for a building and pest inspection?
Yeah. Sure. The industry standards, probably a building inspection on its own is normally about $450, and a pest inspection is about $260. Once you combine them, it normally attracts a little bit of a discount. And, for me, I'm happy to offer like discounted rates for people that come referred. That's just my way of, saying thanks back to the people who recommend us, So you end up paying around the $650 for a combined building and pest.
Yeah.
As far as the industry goes, look, there's plenty of people out there that are doing them between 600, some people doing them upwards of 700. And then it can vary on the size of house. If it's a 5-bedroom or a 6-bedroom home and you've got a pool house at the back and a cellar and attic and things like that, there's a lot of areas to inspect. So the price is normally according to that. If it's a 2-bedroom unit, again, it's going to be much cheaper. You're looking at paying probably around $500.
Yeah.
So in terms of other decisions you'd make on inspectors, it is really important to see their experience. Sometimes you may, there are heaps of inspectors that may have been builders and they're building. And run a building company, and that's great. There's no question about their depth of knowledge and experience. However, it is important to see that they are committed to the inspection and the inspection process. If they're doing other jobs and then an inspection is just kind of a side job for them, then they're not delivering reports on a regular basis, and that's the things that we pride ourselves on. We are 100% inspectors, so all we do is inspect.
Do you ever have purchasers coming with you on the inspection?
Yeah,
we're actually doing the inspection with you so that you can point things out as you go.
Yes and no. We recommend people, if they can, come towards the end. That way we can relay all the information and they can see it firsthand.
They'll obviously still get a report, but
yes.
they can actually come and meet you on site, and you can actually show them the areas that,
And especially if someone English may be their second language, it's better for them to come along and I can point out things to them and explain things in person.
That's really good, I think.
Yeah, we like to do that. It depends on the agent, the vendor. Sometimes they don't like to have anyone else in the property or what have you. And thank you. And,
we got a question come through. Actually, we got a recommendation. So from Rhonda, key property inspections are the best, highly recommended. Well, we think they're pretty good too, which is why we're including Omar on this Facebook Live today. So I guess, what I'd like to drill into is what can people expect from their inspector?
Yep.
What can you and can't you do? So what are the limitations of what you can do as an inspector? Because I think people need to understand, yes, the inspection report will give them some level of detail, but what are the limitations? Yeah,
and thank you for pointing that out, because setting the client's expectation is very important. It's something we try to do, as soon as we get engaged to do their inspections, because things that people don't realise, look, we can't see inside walls. We can't access all areas of the roof. Now, the roof is a really important one. It's an area where there can be a lot of defects. They can be quite serious, but unfortunately, once you climb inside a roof, it's usually very low. There's a lot of insulation. There's usually ducting, and could be so many other things that are limiting or hindering the inspection. So you may not be able to access all areas, and we can just make comment on what's visible and do the best that we can, really. Same as on the roof. If it's too high, we may have to put the ladder up with binoculars and have a good look and see as much as possible again. So one thing we assure our clients is that whatever access is available, we'll take it, but there are limitations.
So in your report, would you normally say where you have
the limitations
and where you haven't looked?
Yeah.
Would that normally be broken down?
Yep. The areas like the roof and what have you, there'll be a list of what was limiting and why, and the risks by not seeing those areas. And then at the end of the report, there's also kind of a conclusion, or kind of a summary of the report that identifies, okay, these are the areas that were inspected, these are the areas that were restricted or limited, and these areas, we couldn't access at all.
Yeah.
So it is important that clients understand that there are areas that we can't really access. There's also a limitation on things like plumbing and electrical works. We've got a level of inspection on plumbing where we'll run all the taps. We do a moisture meter test on all the wet areas, and actually all the internal walls get tested by moisture. We do have a close look at the gutters and downpipes, but if there's no rain, it's hard to tell again if there's a leak or a breach. And unless you really put a CCTV camera inside the drainage for plumbing, you can't really tell if there's any damage.
And that's quite expensive, so...
Yeah.
You wouldn't recommend to do that necessarily?
I normally would tell people, if I uncover some problems, I may then say, look, I recommend you get a CCTV inspection.
That would be something that you would do after
that's right, yeah.
You've done your initial
inspection. In the 4 years, I've only done a handful of times where a client has requested it done at the same time as the inspection. To be fair, they were aware of previous issues, so they wanted to make sure that it was all okay.
Yeah.
And same with electrical. We're limited on what we comment on electrical components, mainly as well because they require an invasive inspection to access certain areas. And what I mean by invasive means it's destructive. You're actually cutting a hole in a wall or something like that. Unfortunately, we can't do that during our inspections. So we may recommend it for further inspection later.
And what sort of questions should a purchaser ask you or ask a building and pest inspector when they're actually starting their inspection? Is there specific questions that you should ask?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I normally test all wall linings for moisture. And it's a really simple task, but it's just basically using a moisture meter and using it everywhere. Not every inspector does that. Some inspectors may only test like around the windowsills or around the wet areas. So that's something that I would probably ask if they do test for moisture around the area. There's also some questions around the site. How far along the site would you check? With the site, that includes your fencing, your driveway, your pathways, surface drainage, things like that. So it'd be good to see how much they do there. And also, again, back on the roof, how much access to the roof did they have or could they have? That's really important that they do make the most of the time, especially checking out the roof area.
I think given some of the things that we've touched on, probably even before you actually choose your inspector, ask them how much time they're going to spend at the property.
Yeah.
you know, where they're going to try and inspect, and just what all the questions that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
because that will probably give you a gauge of how thorough they're going to be.
That's
and I
right.
think if you're going to do it, you might as well do it properly and get a thorough inspection, because it's probably a matter of $50 difference for, you know,
That's
50
right.
or even $100 difference. It doesn't really matter that extra. You know, there's no point getting a cheaper price but not getting a thorough inspection.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, like when I get pests and building inspections on the houses that I buy, I want to make sure that there's going to be no major structural issues that I'm not aware of.
Yep.
You know, so do you feel like in a building and pest inspection that most of the structural issues should be able to be identified fairly easily, or do some of them are in those like limited areas where you can't really investigate?
That's right. Yeah, there are some, for example, the roof space, so the roofing timbers, and if you've got an older property and it's got a suspended timber floor, it's the flooring there that may be a bit limited and restricted, and we can't make too much comment on other than, you know, okay, well, the floor's uneven, bouncy, loose, knocking, or excessive moisture. Again, subject to age as well. You know, some older properties, they're, you know, 1920s built cottages, sometimes the walls will actually be up in a bit of a lean or something like that. Depending on how critical you want to comment, there gets to a point where you say, look, a structural engineer really needs to come and assess this. You know, so an inspector's responsibility is just to really identify, okay, where you need to take this investigation further. It would be, trying to think of the word, not unethical, but we wouldn't really be able to comment on certain areas that may need that invasive or that engineering report.
Yeah, fair enough. We've had a question come through from Emily. Do you do video inspections of properties? I guess that's probably a question, you know, that's quite topical now with COVID.
Yes,
Is that something that you do?
I have done on request for clients. You know, we when I first started the business, we actually had that as one of our service offerings, video reports, but no one took us up on it, so we didn't do it. But I've had to deal with a lot of interstate and international clients recently, and they requested that we not only did a video walkthrough because they didn't have the opportunity to come and have a look at the property themselves, but also I did a walkthrough and then highlighted all the defects that I found through the walkthrough. So we can do it. It's not something that we have been offering.
Would you say that it's a preference to get an inspector that can physically attend the property?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I think that's pretty important. If you're paying for a pest and building inspection, it would be preferable if they can physically be at the property.
Yep.
Like you said, to move the furniture to...
Yeah. So part of our agreement before going on is that we won't actually move certain, or we try to access all areas, but we can't move the furniture as such.
Oh, okay.
We try not to touch any of the vendors' property, in case, God forbid, something goes wrong, or, but there's also, the only other reason is that we have to inspect as we see it, and if there's a big buffet blocking some damage on a wall, unfortunately we can't get behind it and see that, So we won't really move furniture as such because we're not supposed to be handling any of the occupants' possessions. If the vendor's there and they're happy to do a little bit of moving for us, that's fine. I had a situation recently where the only access to the roof was a manhole in the garage, and they had all their furniture and belongings in there. And we did the inspection, and in the report it was just, look, I'm sorry, we couldn't access this area. We actually made arrangements with the agent and the vendors to return the next day. They had cleared the area for us, and we returned and went up there and re-inspected that garage area. So yeah, we're happy to do that sort of thing. We don't want those sort of limitations to hinder the report. Ultimately, we want to offer the most confidence to our clients, by seeing all areas. And I wouldn't be very confident with getting a building inspection but not seeing the roof void at all. But it happens, unfortunately.
So once you get your building inspection report, what can people expect? Like, how many pages is it? Okay. How do they read it? How do you use the report? That can be quite overwhelming, I think, just getting a big report and not understanding the content. So what are your recommendations around the report? Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, I'll answer that just by telling you sort of our process and then what we end up delivering to our clients. So before going out, as I said, there's an agreement form that puts in place, and that really gives the client the scope of work to let them know, again, there's areas that are a bit limited and sort of the areas that we can or can't access and things that we're going to do whilst inspecting. So that's very important that the client, has access to that, to understand that. Then once we've completed the inspection, if they can't meet us on site, we'll normally call the client and give them a verbal debrief of everything we found. And it's really important that we take the time to explain all these things to them, because as you said, you get a 100-page report. It's really overwhelming. Even if you know property, even if you've bought and sold so many properties, it may be difficult to read. There may be terminology that you're not aware of, or you may just not grasp, some of the areas and components. So explaining it to them as best as we can is quite important. We then send the report very shortly after. Now the report normally ranges, like if it's a building only inspection, could be from sort of 60, 70 pages. And then when a building and pest inspection, it could be upwards of 100, 110, and anywhere in between, Really, the more defects, the bigger the report's going to be. And the way the report is set up, it's got a summary of major defects. Now, major defects are items that are either a loss of utility, a safety hazard, or something that if you don't fix or attend to, it could go on to cause bigger problems, or it could be quite a big expense to fix.
Yeah.
So that's major. All our defects.
A lot of structural issues would be covered in the major defect.
If I saw, like, say, a broken rafter in the roof, or again, if I see excessive moisture in a bathroom area, the reason why that would be major is because you may have to replace waterproofing, tiling, so the cost would escalate.
Yes, I
So,
understand.
Yeah. So that's major. Then everything else is considered minor. As you go through the report, it's got the room area, photos of the room, so you can also see the furniture in place. So I'll take a photo of a bedroom, try not to capture the owner's personal possessions as much, but I do have to identify, okay, there was a bed right up against that wall, we couldn't really access behind there. So take as many photos as we possibly can, and then photos of the actual defects. So they should be able to get the note of, okay, we found this, and then the photo of it.
Yeah.
What I always also tell clients after that is, please call me after you've read the report, because I want to follow up any questions. Now, and even if it's just to call me and say, hey, thanks, got the report, all good, no questions. And that's fantastic. But if they got questions, there's no silly or small question to talk about.
Yeah, awesome.
So,
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us, Delia and Louise. Great to have you here. If you've got any questions or comments, please put them below. So just a reminder as well that Omar has kindly and generously offered his top 10 checklist for pre-purchase. So they're the top 10 things that you should be looking for and look out for when you are inspecting properties and when you're looking for the right property to buy, whether it's a home to live in or an investment property. This top 10 checklist is really, really useful. So we will have the link below in the comment section as to how you can get your hands on that. I recommend that you do so. It's free. Omar also does look after Rise High clients from a price perspective, and so if you do go to Omar and want to get a property and pest and building inspection, make sure that you mention that you are part of the Rise High community so that he can give you that extra little bit of love and attention.
More than happy to.
And also we do have some great seminars coming up. We've got a few more left for the year for 2020. So we've got Upgrading Your Home, which is coming up on the 15th of September. So that is next Tuesday. And that's a really good one to come to if you're thinking of upgrading your home and you're not sure what to do with your existing home, whether to keep it, whether to sell it, whether to turn it into investment property. Really, really good one to come to. We've also got a first home buyers seminar on the 6th of October. And then we've got another seminar that is aimed at existing property investors that are really wanting to learn how to grow their investment portfolio to fund their retirement goals. So this might be someone that maybe has 1 or 2 investment properties, but not sure how they're going to use their investment properties to actually fund their retirement goals. So hopefully you will be interested in joining us one of those seminars. You can register on our website, risehigh.com.au, under the seminars section, and we would love to see you there. So thanks, Omar, for joining us. I think it was a really useful chat. And thanks for the questions, guys. And we will see you again next time. Excellent. Bye.
Thank you.